It's so hard. You know, I Oh, yes. Martha, you look so cute. Thank you. Nice. You look cute too. Oh, girl. I like your Thank you. Oh my God. If you haven't
Yeah, they've all got to take two.
Testing. What's that? I don't know. I don't think this is accurate. Liz, can you hear me back there? Yeah, she can hear me. Are we going right for the sound check to the show?
Oh.
Okay. Hello, I'm Michael Helm, your host for tonight's Toronto launch of 3 books from Deer Mountain Pages. Welcome to those of you out there watching the live stream and to those here on Treaty 13 land. This is the traditional territory of nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Thanks to Martha Sharp and Flying Books here at College and Shaw for hosting us in this warm, open space with the most interesting walls, spine to spine, you're ever likely to meet. Grit Magazine has had some launches here before. It's Martha's space is a wonderful one. Always very welcome. We're here to launch 3 of our best poets, and also to celebrate the enterprise that is Deer Mountain Pages. A person might come to wonder who is behind this mastheadless operation that brings forth such beautiful chapbooks by poets and essayists, some publishing anonymously, some heteronymously, some Latin grammarianly. But as a reader, what happens is a couple of books appear in the mail. They present a great clarity of feeling and thought and offer their recognitions or particular strangenesses. They're not all any one thing, but in the sum, there's lyric, assertion, story, imagery, plain speak, whether or not they're in prose, they're of poetry. And they inspire emails and copyright violating image attachments to other readers who want to know about Deer Mountain Pages, and links are sent and more people receive books in the mail. Sometimes what can be said about poetry seems beside the point that is poetry itself. But sometimes what can be shared brings us into a community, something which exists through exchanges, including those of perception and including excited emails and online trade. All that's known to God or human is that at an elevation of 10,000 feet, Deer Mountain is a loose collective of people interested in publishing small books on land, politics, and philosophy. The press favors poetry and essays, and it serves as a basis for conversations of various literary, philosophical, and political topics. Tonight we have 3 readers, and I'm not one of them, so let's just get there. The first reader would have us think her name is Roo Borson. Roo's books include the collaborative works Introduction to the Introduction to Wang Wei by Pain Not Bread, That's Roo, Kim Maltman, and Andy Patton. And Box Kite by Roo and Kim. I first met Roo between the publication of a book she did with Kim, The Transparency of November Snow, and of Intent for The Weight of the World. She's won and deserved all sorts of awards and ran the table of them, including the Governor General's Award and Griffin Poetry Prize with Short Journey Upriver Towards Oshiga. Her most recent books are Cardinal in the Eastern White Cedar and this chapbook, Earth Orchid. Please welcome Roo Borson.
Does that work?
Is that okay?
Would you like to sit down?
No, I want to stand up. Thanks. So this little book contains one long poem, and I'll read that one. Edith Street. In death, I came to visit the city of my birth, populated now by people who had never known me. I passed among them as a stranger and a ghost. What I hadn't counted on, the beauty of the places once taken for the world itself, a birthright, the stamp of every expiring thing, renewed perpetually, a family crest. Redwood, tree fern, a coral pink camellia, from which each morning evening's flowers fall. The morning's blossoms fall face down, browning softly at the edges. I no longer know what they are for, the arts and sciences, pure mathematics being the one art or intermediary that can lead us both astray and home again, the one-to-one apparent correspondence between numerals and the deftly parsed things of this world. We attended the cosmologist's lecture, a lecture on a topic of his choice, an idea said by him to be more beautiful than any painting, which nonetheless could be represented only in conventional form, an old cartographer's map, and skittering across its surface the red tip of the laser pointer. The numerals correspond, but the things of this world can be parsed in any number of ways. The moment passed, and now already this, the plum tree half occluded by leaves. Would you rather go back to Edith Street, where a man could live like a lord with 2 wives in a rented house in the Berkeley Flats when land was cheap, or return to the hills where the dead go to boot every 2 and 4 years among bay laurels, casting their balance amid fallen leaves in the long, scented afternoons, for representatives to the House and Senate, and every 4th year for a president, when there are things that will never be seen again. The dusty test tube light of Strawberry Canyon at noon, the mortar in which the spirit is crushed, a period of mourning for the old style, the pineapple palms framing the Claremont Hotel before it became a last resort and spa, the bit of metal that flies into the eye when you aren't looking, the lost calm, the cream-colored house where the debutante once lived, elephant gray acacias in yellow bloom, treasure buried in the dirt of home, the once bright detail work of fallen plaster from a civilization that once saw itself as civil, research that doesn't turn into the new orthodoxy. For there are things that do not last in the long-leaved afternoons where breezes blow, breezes turning words into dead letters, and letters into letters to the dead. When the places you've known are gone from the face of the earth, and yet retain their earthly look, when that which existed does not see you, even as you stand amid all that exists, when the ways you've been used and to what ends and by whom and the silent betrayals have been accounted for with nothing left over, and those who stare past you and those who cast a look in your direction from a gone world, branded by that fading permanence, still walk among us, exiles and evacuees, and the friends of all ages have been scattered, a squall of petals, an afternoon deluge. It is then they reappear, the spring green hills stretching off into the distance, beyond Tilden and Temescal. And so it was I came back to visit the city of my birth, to ask those I'd known what they do all day, what they find to think about, to do there, lying beneath breastplates of lily or cornflower. Remember a garden sunken in the rain, or the 1,000 oaks that have never been counted. Make up words in languages that can neither be heard nor spoken. Preside over the obduracy of names, objects. Or study instead the resolute ephemera of ice, all 200,000 layers per millimeter. Recalculate the numberless squawks or the moments in an hour. Plot the geometric space of a snowflake. Life is one kind of infinity, they told me, death another, not quite understood, but ordinary nonetheless. Wake up, I heard them say, and by the time I woke, I'd left that place. Angel shark, blue shark, broad-nosed shark, eagle ray, guitarfish, skate. The list of fishes among the most beautiful utterances in English. Bald-chinned groper, banded mormon, black-barred garfish, blue-throat wrasse. Crimson snapper, dusky flathead, English groper. Gemfish, goby, grass emperor. Hairtail, knifefish. Leather jacket and long-nosed emperor. Milkfish, moonfish, the painted grinner. Pink ling. Rabbitfish and rudderfish, sand flounder and silver biddy. Stargazer, surgeonfish, sweet lips, trumpeter. The trumpeter whiting. Banana prawns and champagne lobster, skull prawns and spanner crabs, the gloomy octopus and luminous bay squid, lollyfish and pinkfish passing through the nets, along with the soul that is obvious and genderless. Beneath the 3 bridges of Benicia, the boats are setting out, the military cargo ships and fishing boats, beneath the 3 parallel bridges, the cargo ships transporting parts and weapons, the fishing boats casting their nets into the infinite with no real fish in it. 3 bridges crossing the Carquinez Strait between Benicia and Martinez, the first still visible to those who've seen it, likewise the second and the third, beneath which the boats keep passing, setting out over green water into mist, phantoms. As the iris is the guardian of silence, and its tricorn cup the measure of an hour's rain or one night's dew, as juniper is the tree of childhood and cedar of old age, as this is the inaugural year of our migration into that old age, as generations fall one upon another irrespectively. Magnolia grandiflora, eons of long grasses, tamarins, an era of acquittal and deceit, of tenderness, of marigold and paperwhite, Daphne odora. Lost ideals cast off and blown intermittently across swatches of pampas grass, crabgrass, rattlesnake grass. The hour of disquiet, trespass, of contempt, yet lit by the miraculous. Thus it was that I came back to the city of my birth, back to the patient night rain lifting across the moss, to the live oak and the tan oak, the spruce and the fir, to the bed of city lights still dimming among embers. Back to Edith Street and the hills in the Pacific fog, with no choice to be made here any longer, neither art nor science, for the fondness that reconstitutes the world, grass blade by grass blade, with camellias and with street lamps, scent of resin, then of mint, adrift among the eucalypts, a small moon gliding high above me over Inspiration Point, the laurel-studded canyons, and the day still heating up toward the long afternoon where breezes blow. Thank you.
Laurie Graham. Laurie's first book, Roo, was shortlisted for the Gerald Lampert Memorial Award. Her second, Settler Education, was a finalist for the Trillium Award for Poetry. And a third book, called Fast Commute, another Trillium finalist, came out last year. Her poetry has been shortlisted for the CBC Poetry Prize and won the Thomas Morton Poetry Prize. Laurie is also the publisher and presiding super presence of Brit Magazine. The smarts, compassion, and courage it takes to do that job so well, especially through the recent end of the world, is there everywhere in her work. The chapbook with Deer Mountain is called Calling It Back to Me.
This set of poems. Hi, everyone on the live stream. I see there's a few people there. This group of poems, I'm so glad, is out with Deer Mountain Pages. It's in a few brief words, attempting to learn the stories of my great-grandparents' arrival to this continent and knowing that that's ultimately impossible to do. So I'll just skip through this chapbook and read a few for you. Calling It Back to Me. Sinking through imagined founding, across fault-lined expanse. What wilts, what mutates, the quality of soil. Listing off a ship, 2 chests, belongings gone now, but the chests remain. Seeming crapshoot of names until you consider why these are erased and these retained, why a name is carried by many at once, why we don't just have our own to carry. The hearth was cold, and so. Stories nibbled by our moments exacting microbes. Touching a photograph to discern what she might have been thinking. We mostly forget the names of the towns they left. We don't forget the countries. Borders heave. We don't write. Sometimes a family doesn't have a story keeper. Emptying her basement. Giving things away is in my thinking of them. Empty vessels washed out, saved, stowed, passed down, and now in my hands, while the place they're buried left our memories. The village of Last Mountain. The pause before letting go a wooden spool, a metal tin. 3 hard copies of a scan of a photo of great-great-grandparents. Shared pathology of styrofoam cups. I don't know if there were letters. Servitude, or nothing. A married name, a father's name on a document. Husbands providing the record, cataloged by their labor, carters, watchmakers, joiners, fishers, farmers, a market gardener, a teacher. How the women reach out to me now. Children, livestock, washing, cooking, feeding, mending, minding. The ones who took to the ocean alone. Forever I'll be leaving. Forever I'll be cutting ties. The great-grandmothers. The 4 women in the 4 photos wear dresses and pin back their hair. 2 with lace-up shoes, 1 with corset, 1 with babushka, their legs and bodies, faces, closed mouths, a plant on a stand, a bench seat at the mouth of woods, outside in the sun with her husband, outside gathered with her family, outside alone, in a studio alone. This is the reckoning process. To be careful, precise about my thanks. Would they be happy? Would they be dismayed to see me here in this future? On the inside covers of this chapbook, Mark Bick, who is also the designer of Brick, designed this chapbook, and he put pictures of my 2 babas on the inside covers of this thing. So I will read Ptryrczwz, one of the great-grandmothers. Born in Lviv, Ukraine, died Elk Point, Alberta. She receives a letter from her uncle Prokop. Is anybody coming? It's good here, you'll like it. You can work for yourself, not have anyone over you. Send papers and I'll come, she says. To get an education, you must join the Communist Party. She leaves a boyfriend at home thinking return is possible. I find no record of this Prokop anywhere, any finding dependent on how an English-speaking border guard chose to render what he heard of his name. Prokop's words, our lore, through a phone receiver into my ear, that Paranka came on a dare and fell in love, and here we all are. By 65, she's long been Jenny, long been widowed, long remarried. She sneaks back to the home place, pretending to window shop the sidewalks of Lviv until a car pulls up an alley. A single afternoon in the house, the village she was born in, everything the same, but siblings unrecognizable, walking right by them. I made the right decision. I made the right decision. How you repeat things to yourself to make them so. Sofia Chizowski, born Belice, Ukraine, died Derwent, Alberta. You would not want to cross her. Scrub face and hands, then fold those hands for prayer. The grains in her bread, meals to keep 10 children alive, someone still living in that house she pulled to town after her husband died. I know she made beautiful food that to people who've never been there harkened the old country, giving birth 12 times in a 2-room house, standing over the graves of babies. Did she stand over them or did she stay away? In my mind, her face, her arms, her round body are like unmovable stone. In one photo, her parents and siblings smile softly in front of a building I imagine inaccurately to be a train station in the old country, but is likely her home. 3 grown children soon to scatter through the Americas. She, the focal point to the photograph around which all the other faces spin and from which I seek resemblance, not for affinity, but in search of some scrap of what was before, what drove them all away. There's no smile under her heavy brow, which came from her father, got passed down to her children, her grandchildren, to my brother, his children, my grandpa never knowing his grandpa's, Sophia's father's soft face in the photo. You spring up where you stand, your origins elsewhere. Her hair pulled back under babushka, her husband beside her in overalls and long dark coat, similar heavy brow, but there's a thinness, She, the one you would not want to cross. The story slips so easily into an image of her pulling the house to town by herself with a rope around her waist. All her sons wound up a little seasick, and I don't know why. And no doubt she'd not be happy with me saying so here, or with my godlessness, or even wanting to know the sum of what's been lost from not talking, and to what extent that was her goal. And finally, a good closing. The purple hills. The busy work of robins through the Saskatoons. The photos sorted by who's in them. Boxes with big labels she can no longer read. What might be heirlooms, wristwatch, pocket watch, handkerchief, chisel, a darning mushroom, a tin of teaspoons. Still, the urge is for story. She wants to give. A bright yellow moon rises in her mind. A small pink curl of cloud. No language for any of it. Thank you.
Our third reader is Kim Maltman. Kim's the author or co-author of several books of poetry, for which he's won or been a finalist for the Gerald Lampert Award, the CBC Literary Award, the Malhat Review Long Poem Competition, and the National Magazine Awards. In spaces where people think hard about mathematics and particle physics, he's also the guy who writes about, for instance, apparently, the conventional implementation of the flavor-breaking sum rule determination. You know, that. Along with being himself, tonight Kim is sort of a surrogate reader, standing in for some Deer Mountain Pages writers who can't be here tonight. The Deer Mountain book is 4 Histories and Anti-Heroic Couplets and 5 Digressions. Please welcome Kim Maltman.
So Deer Mountain Pages has been around, I guess, now for 3 years. And I remember the first contact with it was without warning, as it probably was to most people. Envelope appeared. Inside the envelope were 2 books, one essays, clearly anonymously written, and one of poetry. Roo and I discussed this, and we immediately came up with who we thought must be behind it because of the gestural qualities of this book. We won't say that out loud now. So now Deer Mountain Pages has been around for 3 years. It's had 3 seasons, published 2 books in each of those seasons, and 5 of those books are poetry chapbooks. So you've heard from 2 of them, Laurie's and Roo's, and there's 3 others. One from season 1, Sherry Benning's Let Them Rest, which is a sort of family history, Let Them Rest. Jan Zwicky's, and then Queen Hank herself from season 2. I'm talking about it like their TV series, but I thought I meant, so maybe I should say year 3, the unpronounceable author, who I'll just call DPTR, because obviously at the end is some sort of Eastern European sound, but I don't know quite how to pronounce the whole thing. And Michael's already given the title. So I'll read a little sampler from each of those books, one from each of the Deer Mountain Pages here. So first, Sherry Benning's Let Them Rest. All of them. The house in the village, the house in the side of a hill. The farm by Mary Lupel, the farm by Mount Carmel, Wolverine Creek, Bay Trail. The abbey where we planted a copse of blue spruce, the blue spruce. Pit dug, firelit, ripe fields pulse with light and shadow. Clouds rush overhead. Blessed is the field as it burns. And the second sampler from Sherry Benning's book, Minor Doxology. Circle of light on the village street from his kitchen window where he stands in the swelling breath of nightfall. Stares through that cold fire into sifting shadow. Dusk blue snow banked against the porch. beyond the row of houses, evergreens and daguerreotype darkening on winter fields. The galvanized taste of chores rises in his mouth. Well water, dander, frost, and straw. And because place calls to place inside us, he is 70 in the kitchen, even as he is 12 in the farmyard, midway between house and barn, metal pail of new milk, quarter moon, spilled oats, early stars. Sherry Benning, recommended. Okay, this is 2 poems from Jan Zwicky's book, and then The Queen Hanged Herself. So, female voices, but I don't think it's any problem. I'm going to read it anyway. I already warned Jan about this if she's still online, so she knows it's happening. Aeneid, Book 4, Anna. You don't understand. I did adore her, and her death was mine. But it wasn't trading sweaters and painting one another's fingernails. It was Carthage. We made it happen. We'd closed the door, the 2 of us, dug up the gold and hauled it to the beach. The strips of hide were my idea, but it was her strength that kept the army loyal. You see, our souls are fire, just like the souls of men. I do not want to understand what it's no use, I do. Hers ate her from the inside out, and I couldn't stand her pain. At every turn, I was its tool. But if instead a voice from up there in the clouds had said that it was she, not he, who had to live to stake some lineage, we'd have laughed. Heroes never kill themselves for love. Smoke rose to heaven. How it stank. Aeneas out there in the cool blue sea. Next, Iliad, Book 1, Briseis. I was wrecked, of course. No soul could take it. Fucked and fucked and fucked. But I saw the others too. The men they'd caught but didn't kill. The cattle and the dogs. That's what you have to understand. No thing is a thing. It takes so little pain to learn this. Unless perhaps your pain's so huge you become a thing in order to avoid it. I've seen them cry, the ones who aren't yet slaves themselves, with other men at their own need for love. Even when they have it, they convince themselves they don't. Is that what things are? Ones that love can't visit. Ones who think their dads will see them crucified before the gates will open. Glory, glory, glory. And finally, just one from this book, because the ones I like best are longer. This one, I should say that when I first saw the title, I thought, come on, this is like Dickens over the top. But then I have to confess, looking online, this person actually exists. There is indeed a documentary called Bernard Coffindaffer, Point Man for God. So this seems to all be true. Unpronounceable DPTR, Mr. Bernard Coffindaffer. I must have been in my early 30s, driving across America in a beat-up old Lada that would absolutely not start in the morning without first being sweetened up with a teaspoon of vodka. Here and there, groups of 3 crosses would rise up unexpectedly out of the landscape, 2 painted baby blue, 1 gold. Next to the turnoff for the last McDonald's for the next 55 miles, or on a hill above a farmhouse with a broad front porch and stars and stripes gone limp at midday hanging down. Often these were on the outskirts of hard-scrabbled towns I'd pass through, stopping for a coffee and a grilled cheese sandwich or a BLT, followed as I sat down at the counter by suspicious looks. Towns not mentioned in my dog-eared guidebooks, which anyway were out of date, covering a swath of territory along Route 66, well off the interstate. And so on down into the bleak, perpetually sun-baked plains of southwest Kansas. Here the crosses finally petered out. Vast stretches of occasional small towns with signboards outside local high schools, missing a few snap-on letters, wishing last year's grads well. On and into Frank Baum territory. Downtown liberal and an easy on the budget cinder block hotel with cable TV as its main amenity. It was here that on the local PBS it seemed odd to be watching, propped up on a rock-hard bed as traffic rolled past along East Pancake Boulevard, from a documentary called Bernard Coffindaffer, Point Man for God. I came to learn the story of those crosses and the man responsible for them. He just turned 59, a varied, often complicated life behind him. From leaving school at 14 to the Iwo Jima landing, the several millions made running coal washing hills, a difficult divorce, eventually 2 heart attacks, the second one the more severe, a wake-up call that. Then the several months enforced recuperation during which, pondering what kind of future this might mean, one night alone, just after dinner, drifting off before the TV in the basement den, a voice calling on him personally, Bernard Coffindaffer, out of his great love for Jesus, to take up this mission and raise groups of crosses all across America. All this recounted, not as one might have expected with great joy and awe, but with a grim, strangely aggressive righteousness. Those who objected, claiming that the sight of crosses looming up like that called up out of the not-so-distant past cross burnings in the Klan. They just hate Jesus. As for whoever took a chainsaw to the set raised just the week before in southern Florida, he'd like to show them how a chainsaw works, see how they like it. Not to mention that he's got a cop who's going to sort him out. As of his death a month before the airing of the documentary, he, starting from near his home in West Virginia, managed to erect some 1,800 sets, first in the US, then the Philippines and Zambia, burning through his entire fortune, much to the family's chagrin, but able to carry on once the donations started flooding in. Searching the web, I find that many of these sets still stand today, first fallen into disrepair, then taken up and since maintained by local activists. Coming on all of this again after so many years, I picture them, newly painted and on clear late summer afternoons, on hills outside of town spread out across America with, even more than in the past, no great love of outsiders. 2 crosses painted blue, 1 gold. Watching the Trump phenomenon unfold, that paneled 60s style den comes back to me with terrifying regularity. I see him sometimes, joyless, bitter, in his mind though, keeper of the gate keys to the sweet hereafter, Mr. Bernard Coffindaffer.
I realize I don't like walking up to the mic after each reader's finished. It's sort of like, jet skiing into the wake of a great whale or something. But thank you to Roo and Laurie and Kim. That was wonderful. And thanks to those people who are behind Deer Mountain pages. We're going to, there's a table of strawberries and biscuits over there. You don't have those, I bet. We'll enjoy them, and we'll be thinking of you on the live stream. Thanks for hanging out here and for listening in there.
And there's books.
And yeah, we've got books and books upon books to sell. We'll sell all more. We move a lot of stuff right now.
Remove the stuff, yeah.
Thank you all. Good night.